Now, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo has refuted long-standing claims that he attempted to extend his presidency beyond 2 terms, insisting that he never sought such a move. Well, Obasanjo made the remarks on Wednesday during the Democracy Dialogue hosted by the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation in Accra, Ghana. He stressed that no evidence exists to back that speculation. Now, elsewhere on the political divide, former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai has drawn a controversial comparison between Nigeria's current political trajectory and that of Cameroon under long-serving President Paul Biya, warning that unless Nigerians act decisively in the 2027 election, President Bola Tinubu could emulate Biya's decades-long tenure. He also further took a dig at the president, describing him as a fake Democrat, especially over the recent alleged attacks on members of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, in parts of the country. Speaking when former Vice President Atiku Abubakar paid him a solidarity visit in Abuja over the recent altercation that ensued during a meeting of the opposition party in Kaduna, the former Minister of the Federal Capital Territory said that Tinubu intended to take after some sit-tight African leaders who have failed to vacate their seats after spending decades in power. Now, lastly, the Forum of State chairman of the defunct Congress for Progressive Change yesterday reiterated its support for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ahead of the 2027 presidential election. It also distanced itself from the recent visit of some of its members to the Abuja residence of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, describing it as the personal decision of a few individuals who did not represent the position of the group. While the forum also urged the presidency and the ruling All Progressives Congress to address what it called the continued marginalization of the CPC bloc within the APC. Well, so many juicy issues to dissect this morning, and joining us to do so for the political brief is Arise Director of News and Politics Editor, Sumna Sambo. Sumna, good morning. Welcome to the morning show today.
Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Rufai.
Morning, Sumna.
Okay, Sumna, good morning. I can go to town on the topics, but I don't want to do that. I would prefer to listen to you. First, on the President Olusegun Obasanjo saying that if he wanted a 3rd term, he could have achieved it. Well, I think that 2006 National Political Reform Conference was hijacked by proxies, including a famous character who said, what money cannot do, more money will do it. And that National Political Reform Conference was also not backed by law, which is the basic difference between the 2006 National Political Reform Conference and the 2014 National Political Conference by the Jonathan administration. But the devil is in the details. In other words, I'm saying, in my view, I think President Obasanjo was right when he said, look, his interest was debt relief, not 3rd term. But we run a country where people are more interested in their own pockets, and they will fight proxy wars, and they will try to enrich themselves. Can Nigeria go after those people and remind everyone? I don't want to mention names, but maybe you know who those proxies, those culprits are. However, it's good that we were saved the Cameroonian situation, the Eritrean situation, the Rwandan situation by having a president who will perpetuate himself in office. My question to you is, do you think it can happen here someday? With Nasir El-Rufai saying, oh, Tinubu wants to be president for life. Now, that takes me to Nasir El-Rufai. What proof does he have? Is there a proof that Tinubu wants to be president for life? I don't think we can know that until after the 2027 elections. I think Tinubu now wants to win in 2027. So after 2027, we'll watch how he behaves. But Nasir El-Rufai receiving Waziri Adamawa, what do you expect them to say in a meeting? Of course, they will cook up a conspiracy against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But do you, as the main watcher of politics, have you seen from body language or behavior that President Tinubu wants to be president for life? Those are my two posers.
All right, thank you, Obati, and so good to have our viewers joining us once again. Let's start with the issues of the third term, the aborted third term, as many would like to put it. The first point here is that not so many Nigerians, people within the international community actually believe former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Because, some of the things that led up to that event that happened, that culminated on May 16, 2006, being defeated at the floor of the Senate chaired by then Senate President Kenny Namani, showed that there was a deliberate attempt, actually, at trying to see how Obasanjo could actually get a sort of tenure elongation. So let's just assume we're not going to use this word third term. Some sort of tenure elongation based on what had been happening within the polity and then the trust that a whole lot of Nigerians and people within the international community had in Obasanjo. And then they believed that Obasanjo performed more within 2003 and 2007. And so most of the reforms that happened within this period. And then the time for him to exit was now looking too short. And so I don't know if you remember a group called Corporate Nigeria, which was chaired by Ndidi Okereke Onyeoke, former Director General of the Nigerian Nigerian Stock Exchange, as it was then called, where they actually, a whole lot of business leaders and all of that, and some of the people that Obasanjo had empowered, came together to actually get some funds to put together and drive some sort of agenda. And then there were talks here and there that there was a meeting that was held at Aso Rock then among the presidential aides, where it was said that this agenda was laid on the table, but many people within the aides rejected and cautioned against it. And of course, there were talks here and there that Atiku Abubakar, as former vice president, used his network to actually work with Kenny Namani and others to defeat this agenda. That political reform conference that you talked about, there were lots of talks here and then by then Deputy Senate President Ibrahim Mantu that, they were actually leading this move for a third time to be introduced. And so the Nigerian media was there. We watched it. We saw a whole lot of things. So when Obasanjo says all of this, it will sound very unbelievable and many people wouldn't want to believe him. Yes, he may not have direct proof, but of course, there were proxies who went to actually canvass for that time, saying that Obasanjo was the father of modern Nigeria and there's no one who could actually make Nigeria much more greater and better and having a nationalist president than Obasanjo. And they are very true and correct. Up till date, there's no Nigerian president that has been as great as Obasanjo, right from the military to now. And that's why you would have seen what Reno Omokri also wrote about him, saying that, when it comes to the issues of patriotism, waking up to Nigeria every day and finding out if the governance is going right or wrong, former President Obasanjo is one patriot leader that we know that still stands for the country. But these issues of third term, it's something that will always go down way to the grave with him. But the reality is that that talk of a third term was real. And if you look at what Aisha Osori and Professor Chidi Odinkalu has said, that there was even a withdrawal of about $500 million from the excess crude account. And then, of course, juxtapose it with the funding from the corporate Nigeria. A whole lot of things happened. So former President Olusegun Obasanjo should just, keep the issues of evidence aside. And then we'll now go on to the issues.
Sambo, President Obasanjo is saying, if there's anybody alive today that said he discussed third term or tenure elongation, as you insist with him, that person should come out and say so. So he has thrown out a challenge in that regard. As for the proxies, the contractors, I just complained about all these consultants looking out for their own stomachs. I think that's the challenge that we should address. But Nasir Rufai saying Tinubu wants presidency for life. Where is his evidence?
Yes, when you talk of that, definitely, you see it's just a political contraption being put in place by Atiku and Rufai trying to say that, Tinubu has all of this. But, you see, these are political games that the elites usually play. And all of these people are friends, political friends who are just trying to play on the, the intellect of Nigerians. What I'm saying here is that El-Rufai and Atiku Abubakar are suffering from the same thing that Tinubu actually suffered from this set of people. Because in 2003 to 2007, don't forget, El-Rufai was FCT minister, Atiku Abubakar was vice president, and Tinubu was facing the heat from the Obasanjo-led administration then, and he was being, pushed here and there. So here we are, 20 years on. Tinubu is president. El-Rufai is in opposition, Atiku is in opposition, and Tinubu is trying to pay them back. So my suspicion is that it is what is happening at the National Assembly that's making El-Rufai to feel this way, that the National Assembly under President Bola Tinubu seems to have been totally hijacked, and everybody seems to be kowtowing to what President Tinubu wants. And so from their own thinking, if the National Assembly doesn't seem to be standing on behalf of the people, and it's looking like an extension of the executive branch of government, then of course President Tinubu has a further ambition. But President Tinubu is entitled to a second term, and he's not in his second term that will start, saying all of this. So I just want to say that Nigerians should be very careful of some of the things that they hear from the opposition. All right. Because we don't have enough proof.
I want to...
but my suspicion is that it is coming from this angle, actually.
Let's get deeper into some of those allegations, Sumner. Because he went further to say that Nadeko was fake. Everything that President Tinubu did for Nadeko and, as he posed to be a Democrat was fake in that statement. He spoke very strongly. And then he also spoke about political thuggery. So he's saying that, if the political thuggery that he's experiencing continues, then there's only one direction we're going in. My question to you is, if you look at the ingredients that are available currently, on the ground in the political climb, especially compare them to an era where reportedly, or shall I say allegedly, and former President Olusegun Obasanjo is said to have based on reports, he's said to have had the power, if he wanted to possibly have been able to manipulate the system for a third term. If we're to put everything in context, right? Let's now move that conversation to where we are now. Given the ingredients and the climate, if somebody decided to behave in an undemocratic way, are the ingredients for the recipe all available for such a person to behave in that way?
Vimba, very good question there. I mean, all the ingredients are actually there. I mean, talk about the National Assembly. What President Tinubu and his APC could not get through the ballots, they've gotten through, the manipulation of the system. That's why you see that the APC has got close to two-thirds, if not, going to be more than two-thirds when the National Assembly resumes plenary. Talk about having about 73 senators. The APC didn't get that during the election, but through one subterfuge or, dropping of one thing or the other, a whole lot of people have been able to move into the APC, giving it a very huge majority. In the House of Reps, the same thing. You're going to have over 240 House of Representative members and all of that going to the APC. Now, if President Tinubu does want to do that in his next term, assuming he wins in 2027, the ingredients are right there. And I can tell you that we need to be on the watch to watch our democracy to ensure that elected personalities do not get into government and they push the people aside. There are reasons why we have checks and balances. There are reasons why political parties should continue to maintain their colors, especially in the National Assembly when they get elected. But I can tell you that President Tinubu knows the consequence too. He can't try that because when former President Olusegun Obasanjo, in one way or the other, through his body language, had this idea coming up, a whole lot of people rose up. The media was against it, the CSOs and all of that. Yes, it may look like the media and the CSOs are weakened under our current democratic practice, but nonetheless, I can tell you that the Nigerian people will not allow that to happen. But yes, those opportunities are there, and most times, Nigerian leaders always feel that when they get into their second term, it's too short. And that's why we keep saying, once you get into power, start your reforms on time. President Obasanjo, Tinubu at the moment hasn't done his restructuring reforms. And that's why a whole lot of people may be suspecting that if he does get into second term, he will want to do those reforms that may tilt towards the third term.
Sumner, in your honest of hearts, with this National Assembly that you know, if a bill for tenure elongation is given to this National Assembly that you know, can you, in your honest of heart, beat your chest that this National Assembly will reject it? I mean, why do we deceive ourselves so much in this country? You can say El-Rufai is talking theatrics because he's in the opposition. But as a Rivers State taught all of us a lesson where they constituted an aberration and the courts did not hear that case of a declaration of a state of emergency because there was a political impasse between Wike and his godson. So if that could happen, and even while the president was trying to explain himself away, that's why I said, he will explain, tire. Because we know the truth. Wike came on TV and said if he wanted to extend state of emergency, he will extend it. So people that can give state of emergency, who says that they can't get a tenure elongation if they want? Let's put the facts on the table and analyze it. Sumner, I don't know your reaction to this. My question to you is, in your honest of heart, with this National Assembly, do you think if they bring a tenure elongation, this National Assembly will say no to anything that involves President Tinubu? In your honest of heart, Sumner. Hello, Sumner,
I'll be very frank with you that the National Assembly, as it's... Yes.
Go ahead.
Here, actually.
Yeah.
I'll be very frank with you. I mean, if such a bill does get to the chambers of the Senate or House of Representatives, it may want to scale through because the APC will use its majority to actually ensure that the president gets what he wants. But I can tell you that by then it will be a different ballgame because the media and the civil society wouldn't want that to happen. And the National Assembly members are accountable to their representatives, to their constituents. And so it will be a situation whereby it will be the people, the CSOs, and the media against the National Assembly. There's a tendency that people in the National Assembly may want to pursue such an agenda, but I can tell you that with pressure from both the media, the civil society, and the people themselves, that wouldn't happen. And I don't see President Tinubu wanting to do that because he knows the consequences of doing that. And that's why we keep saying that if we have a National Assembly that have different colors of political parties, it is better for everybody because we cannot all be thinking the same way in democracy. And that's why we have a multi-party democracy. I see, no matter how you would hate former President Buhari about it, he always canvassed for a multi-party democracy to be given an opportunity because he knows what happened while he was in opposition. And I think that this is the time to call on President Tinubu to actually do the reforms that he talked about while he was in the opposition. The issues of INEC chairman, the next INEC chairman, like I keep saying every time I come here, Nigerians must not leave that system to the executive alone. Let's have an idea on who the next INEC chairman is. We should have enough time to debate the good and the bad aspect of the person.
Okay.
And then, of course, let's look at other reforms, the issues of restructuring. Why has President Tinubu and his APC not do all the restructuring that they promised? The El-Rufai committee that was set up by the APC and all the reforms that they proposed, it hasn't been done. So maybe these are the sum total of the things that are making El-Rufai, Atiku, and all of that saying that.
Thank you very much.
It's clear that we're pointing towards
if they will give me the job,
one-party system.
If they will give me the job, I would like to be the next INEC chairman and help them to run elections. But would they consider me? You know, so many political issues on the table, including Ibokite Ibas in Rivers, who is saying nobody should probe the 6 months. But thank you very much. We'll keep dealing with these issues as we move towards 2027, and we'll continue to insist on electoral reform, good governance, and democratic rule.